Come on, Dan. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Henry Gordon-Smith, and we're here for a live webinar on Agritecture. Today, we're going to be talking with Dan Nelson, founder and CEO of GrowComputer, the latest ag tech hardware company to enter the market. We're really excited to talk to him about his new innovation. I'm Henry Gordon-Smith, founder of Agritecture.com, and we've been blogging about all things ag tech and urban agriculture for about 9 years now. So we're really excited to continue to share knowledge, and these live streams are something we're experimenting with, and so we're really excited that you're watching, and thanks for paying attention. So Dan, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. This is fantastic, and it's exciting to be part of the future when we have all three platforms working together and hopefully reaching a pretty big audience.
Yeah, I mean, technology is advancing quickly, but these live stream technologies still have some ways to catch up. But you know, we're all about the cutting edge and experimenting with new things. So that's great. So I mean, today I really want to talk a little bit, obviously, about this GrowComputer here, but also a little bit about yourself. So I guess let's begin. What am I really looking at, and what is GrowComputer? And when can we kind of expect to get our hands on it?
Absolutely. Well, so technically, this device here is now called the GrowStrip.
Right. GrowComputer is your company.
GrowComputer is the name of the company, and while we originally had started and I kind of congealed around this idea, we've actually seen that the technology that we developed is more than just this one product. So we're really excited about the future, and to try to avoid some confusion, we did a massive rebrand. This is all of our old logo and branding, but this was actually for the Agritecture conference in March. But we're really excited about the launch of this product. It's actually happening next week. And what this device is, the GrowStrip, is supposed to be the digital platform for any indoor grow. And I think what we're seeing, or what I've seen, is that when you look at the massive farms that are really innovating in the field around the world, especially in indoor agriculture, they have really advanced systems, and they're starting to collect a lot of data and really control very precisely all the different factors that are going on inside this controlled environment. But when you start to look at the smaller side, the home grower, the educator, the classroom, or even the researcher, you don't see any of that technology that's reached. So over the last couple of years, actually, I think it was exactly 2 years ago that we met the first time around Ag Tech Week 2016. I've just been excited about how do I take some of these exciting concepts and play around with them on my own. And after years of tinkering and experimenting and trying to figure out how to code Raspberry Pi and Arduino, or not looking at the price tag of some of these other systems, we really realized that there was something here that if we could develop a simple platform for anybody, where all you had to do is plug in all the electrical devices that you have in these indoor grows, and then easy plug-and-play sensors, where just like plugging in a keyboard or a mouse to your computer, you could plug in a sensor that would have detailed information and be able to collect it in one place. So then you could analyze it or share or monitor, or really any of these advanced scientific and operational things that people are doing at the high end that's just been prohibitively expensive or difficult for anybody else.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. So, talking about the high end, these farms are obviously spending millions. They've got investors coming in, and so maybe that's part of the justification for all these sensors and the role of data, right? I mean, if I'm a big farm, I have to prove what I'm growing. I have to prove that I can optimize, to prove that I have, plant recipes. What's the value proposition for, let's say, these hobby growers, or even maybe define a little bit more about the sizes that would be the best for this first product? Which is really what you're saying, is that nothing was really provided for them, and so you're trying to fill that gap, which I think is really interesting. But what's the reason? Like, if I've got my grow, that I would want to know all this data and invest in that.
Well, I think that's when you're building this controlled environment, you have the opportunity to optimize everything that goes into that room. And if you're able to optimize it, whether it's a different varietal of a plant or a different temperature, light spectrum, light duration, or any one of 100 other variables, you might be able to optimize it and actually innovate. And I think what's happening at the high end, as you mentioned, is that there's a lot of this capital investment. And right now, it seems like most of those farms are towards leafy greens and herbs and microgreens and such, just because of the economic system that goes into that. So because leafy greens you can probably turn 13 to 16 times a year, you have to do that to pay for the tens of millions of dollars of investment. For a hobbyist or even a classroom, when you're just trying to teach people and learn about all of these different environmental factors and how it works, we think that there's a whole new world of possibility to grow. You ask anybody on my team, everybody's got a different type of crop that they want to grow. One guy wants to grow, apothecary type herbs and medicinal stuff where, natural medications. Another one wants to grow a very specific type of chili pepper that's only found in New Mexico. We're going to tell those stories via video later on, but to do that at home and to do that in a controlled environment, especially in a city like Brooklyn, unless you just really have the ability to tune all of those things, you might not know what works. And if you do have the ability to tune those things, how do you optimize it to actually maybe do better than what you could do outside? And I think that's coming, but we just don't know. And we want to provide a tool for people to even test and experiment.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think you're right. As these kind of indoor growing operations are becoming more advanced and maybe some of the knowledge is becoming more democratized, people can actually create new businesses around this. And you look at Farm One and what they're doing, they're not a big farm, right? But they're growing enough product to make revenue and to fill a specific gap. You talked about people growing specific peppers. You can make a hot sauce business. There's actually real legs to that. Yeah. Or maybe people doing medicinal things like that, and you need that control. So I guess how does that work? Like, let's say I have my grow at home, and I really want to focus on quality. I really want to be tracking what's happening in the farm, what worked when. What does this do? You're saying the digital platform, right? So tell me a little about how I would approach that with the grow strip specifically.
So in any of these systems, and the system that we have behind us is just a demonstration of what a grow room is. But in any of these systems, you're bringing in all of the controls through electricity. So we saw that the electrical outlets and those surge protectors and block timers are just, there's no real information coming out of it. So that was the first place that we started, and we realized that instead of splicing wires and soldering things together, let's just use electrical plugs to be able to turn on an electrical system on and off. And then how do you know when to turn those systems on or off? And what we've realized is that there's different types of programs. So for example, a light cycle might want to go on at 7 a.m. and be on for 16 hours, while a water pump or a fan might go on for 5 minutes at a time and then off for an hour. And then even more advanced is that if you want to set to a 76-degree temperature and you know that there's a heater and a cooler, we can set automation through software to control the heater and cooler to get the temperature sensor to level out at that temperature. And right now, in order to do any of those tasks, it's really impossible for a small grower. And I think that there's an information gap and a technology gap in these small systems for people like me, who I tried to do this. I tried to build these systems. I tried to teach myself engineering to even get there. And then only after going through this process do you realize how much technology and skill and really smart software coding needs to go into something like that. And that's what we're hoping to kind of productize. And we realize that we can do it because we kind of had a vision, and my team is fantastic. My co-founder is able to make these devices and give us prototypes that we can test on. And then we have a software team that's able to really understand the rationale of why you would want to do this. And we're building it into software. So as people are starting to expect in 2018, you want to be able to pull out your phone and see what's going on. Whether it's your smart home, your smart, you could Nest, you could camera in, you could do Alexa, you could open up your front door for the Amazon delivery. But when it comes to the grow room, there's nothing out there right now unless you cobble all of these together. And we want it to be the tool that kind of brings all of those ideas and functions together. And then if we can collapse it around this one idea, and we make it consistent enough for everybody around the world, what we've done is we created a communication platform and a community. So we're excited about the idea of people in, we're going to see an aquaponics setup at a university this weekend in Pennsylvania. We're talking to them, but we're also talking to schools here in New York. We've got reached out from over 7 countries where if people are growing these things around the world, can there be this community of global farmers that can help troubleshoot or help test or do an A/B test or optimize? And those are the things that I think are really exciting once the hardware requirements and the prerequisites that are currently there get out of the way.
So we're going to talk a bit more about this and maybe see a bit of a demo of the dashboard.
Absolutely.
So stick around for that. But I want to talk a little bit more about your journey, because that's what inspires me, right? Obviously, I've created the blog and I'm sharing ideas because I want to connect with other entrepreneurs around the world who care about growing food in cities and that potential impact, but also know that we need to talk to each other and share ideas to actually solve this very, very enormous problem. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey, because we're here at the AgTechX CoLab, which is essentially hosted within Agritecture, and this is a co-working space. You can see we've got hydroponic systems.
We were incubated here. This has been excellent for us too. So
great. Yeah, we're going to talk a bit about that. But yeah, I mean, GrowComputer and the Grow Strip was kind of prototyped and incubated here, which is, we're so proud to share that. But at AgTechX, we talk a lot about the journey, kind of the arch of people to become leaders in the sustainable agriculture space. And so it kind of starts with curious people who are looking online for information, enthusiasts, meaning that they actually go to events, they start spending a little bit of money, investing in maybe they build a grow, and then getting into like emerging professional and professional. So on that early stage of it, talk to us a little bit about your journey, because I think it's really inspiring, and I think it relates to mine, and I think also a lot of other people around the world. So where did the inkling come from, and what are some of the steps? I know you grew food in your furniture at home.
Yes, that was one step. I mean, I come from as unlikely of a background to be doing this as anybody else in this community. I think that's what's really cool, is that there is this group of people that want to be here in this community and are really excited about the future of sustainability, or green roofs, or energy management, waste management, nutrition, and this community has kind of supported all of that. But for me, I mean, I am a recovering accountant. I started my career doing accounting and consulting, doing finance. I've worked in technology companies, and I had never grown a plant until like 4 years ago. So when I moved in with my now wife, for the first time in my life since I left my parents' house, I had outdoor space that was mine. And I think that's something that's lost on a lot of people that don't live in New York, is the premium on having any outdoor space that's your own. So my first year, I decided to start planting things, and over a couple summers, I got better and better and better at it, and I love it. And there's nothing more addicting than planting a tomato and a strawberry plant on a whim and actually getting plants to come. I knew nothing. Like, I knew literally nothing. I just knew that if I watered them every day and put a little bit of fertilizer in, it'd be great. But over time, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, oh, what worked on this plant? Does that work on this plant? Then you go to YouTube and you go to all these blogs and communities. I wasn't quite into this space just yet.
That's okay.
We'll get there. But really what got me into the whole ag tech movement is going on my honeymoon. And how do you keep a small balcony garden watered for 17 days? And it's so ridiculous to think, because I ultimately asked my sister just to stay there, but at that time, I had no idea how I was going to keep all my plants alive. And this was at the end of July, and I had kept everything alive for 4 months already, and I'm not going to let these go. Right. So for about a month, I was tinkering around and looking online and figuring out what we could do, because we had no water and no electricity out there. And ultimately, I built this gravity-based irrigation system. So basically, think of it as like a 22-gallon bucket, elevated above the plants with a hose.
Pump the water up, and then it drips down.
Well, it wasn't quite pumping the water up. It was me bucket brigading from my bathroom.
That's hard to automate.
Yeah, it's not quite automated. But I figured, like the math worked out, half a gallon a day, 22 gallons should be good.
Sure, yeah.
So I did it, and I turned it on for the first test. The whole system was dry in like 40 minutes because there was no way to regulate it. Well, that sucked. And then I did it again, and I got it to like an hour and a half. And then ultimately, I just started to think, where does the water go? What's going on with the water that it could just run through a system like this so fast? And that was the first kind of kick towards hydroponics. And then actually on my honeymoon, a book inspired me. It's Abundance by Peter Diamandis. And what he does is he talks about exponential growth. And one of the places that he talks about it is in the future of food. Because what you'll see, what the demographics say, is that over the next 30 years, this is the ag tech pitch, every single ag tech company has the same exact one to start.
It's the first slide, right?
Right, it's the first slide of every single one. Where there's going to be 2 billion more people, everybody's going to live in cities. But also, more importantly, is that people are going to be leaving poverty. There's another billion people that are going to leave economic poverty. And as they leave, one, they're going to be going to cities. But two, their demand for fresh food actually increases more faster than their income. So, like, all right, this is really cool. And that was perfect timing because I had come back and it was right before AgTech Week 2016. So I came back and I started looking around and I found this community. You know, you guys, I didn't build it. It was amazing that it was going and I had a chance to come in and meet. And I think, if I recall, my first idea was a container farm. And I'm like, all right, well, containers are really cool because they're portable and they're modular and you can stack them and you can put them everywhere and they're cheap. And basically they're waste. Right now they're just like waste. They're used once and then they're discarded. I'm like, oh, containers are awesome. What if we could do it for $10,000? Because for me, access to price was always paramount. Because if you put all this capital investment in, it's really hard to pay off.
Yeah, especially if you're selling leafy greens.
Yeah, if you're selling leafy greens at $4 a pound, there's just a lot. So I had some crazy ideas. I commissioned an artist to do 3D models, and it was just. But it was a thesis of which to kind of navigate my way into the space, because having that point of view of like smarter, more technologically advanced farms was really the first way in. And then from there, just being able to come to events and meet people and talk to the entrepreneurs that have already started companies and work out of AgTech X was such a great place because there's always interesting people coming through. And I was not bashful about sharing this concept of smart farms. And it was just an unbelievable experience. And what was started as kind of like my 80-20 professional hobby just grew more and more and more because of the energy in the community and the people here. And it was just a fantastic opportunity. It's just been a great journey. And it's been some of the most rewarding work I've ever done.
So it's really inspiring to hear that. And it's even more for me because I saw you then and I see you now, and I'm just really excited about it. But let's talk a little bit about Square Roots, right? So there's not so many options for entrepreneurs looking to get into the space. And I would, Square Roots is a client in Agritecture Consulting, so I was working with them, and I remember getting your video, and it was actually on your balcony, and it was like the Chrysler building in the background. And we watched it again this morning just to kind of catch up. But talk about what were you looking for out of that program? And obviously not everybody could get accepted. There was only 10 spots with 450 applications. But and how did you respond to that afterwards? Like, how did you not give up, or what did you choose to do after that?
Well, I think what I realized about Square Roots is that Square Roots was trying to train farmers, and I am never going to be a farmer. I am not a farmer at all. But I was always interested in the technology that was going into farms.
Getting your hands on it and learning that. Yeah.
And it's funny. I dug up the video, we watched the application, and I'm doing now with GrowScript kind of a lot of those same things that I had geared up on. It's just how in a city, how do you create a system that you could optimize all these environmental variables to maximize the output? To me, kind of a plant is like an algorithm, right? You plant the seed. If you figure out the right sequence of nutrition, water, light, and all of those other things that I'm not a farmer about that I can't tell you, but these are all variables and they're metrics, and that if you could track them, you could optimize them on a plant-by-plant basis and a system-by-system basis. And that was what moved me. And so my whole video was about creating smarter farms, and I had this concept of a container farm, and I just applied. And it was really cool to kind of look back on it and find that video last night, actually, and see that, kind of that mission of figuring out better systems to grow food worked. I think in the video I had my first indoor grow box. So basically I bought like a computer cabinet and put an aero farm in it, an aero garden. And it was an aero garden, and it was just like this little consumer thing. But by putting a hydroponic system in a closed box, learned a ton, because you see kind of how the humidity and the temperature fluctuates.
That's what happens with controlled environment agriculture. When you invest in controlling those variables, you start to get these outputs if you're tracking the data properly, or at least you start to learn how to control those variables you mentioned. So it's very interesting for the future in response to climate change, and also cities that don't have a lot of soil, for example. But okay, so then that Square Roots thing didn't really work out. So we kind of stayed in touch and connected a bit.
Well, I basically hung out at the offices every day. So yeah. we stayed in touch, and then I actually did the Agritecture workshop in
Yes,
Boston,
yeah, that's
which
true.
was amazing because in our group was White, who's now on the team, Ricky, who's running direct AgTechX, and a bunch of other people that we still keep in touch with, and so it was kind of a cool program to see that there is this energy.
So let's talk about AgTechX. So we were in AgTechX was in Agritecture's old office at the beginning, a small 700 square foot space, remember that little basement?
I'll never forget it. Yeah.
So you were really involved at the beginning about how the space should be designed and kind of the how there could be tools for entrepreneurs like yourself, which was, I guess, an asset kind of being there at the beginning, but also a great benefit to AgTechX because we got to really hear what mattered to you and what you needed. We talked about building one of these. We had Cersei, who was doing an experiment that you worked with. Can you talk about some of the early things you did at AgTechX and maybe how those experiments formed and got you closer to the growth strip?
Well, I think before AgTechX, I have to talk a little bit about OpenAg, right?
Yeah.
So I was, one of the things that I realized is that in order to do the smart farming, I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about anything. So I kind of caught wind of the OpenAg movement, and I was just captivated by this idea. The ideas of what OpenAg says is just intoxicating when you think about it. How do you look at an environment that had the best yield or the best tasting crop and recreate it in a box like this? So I had gone through the process. I built the food computer, met a whole bunch of really exciting people, but ultimately, it fell out with the team that I was working on, which is another story.
Happens. It's part of startup life. Yeah.
It absolutely happens. But I was left with the food computer, and we had this device that was not dissimilar to this, and we just needed a place for it. I'm like, Ricky, is it cool if we bring this here? And it was just kind of this magnet for people, even though it never worked because it was just unbelievably complex. This is kind of
the parts, the wiring, that in particular is complex.
Me personally, I spent probably 80 hours making wires by hand. And if you've ever made a wire by hand, it is the most miserable thing. So we had 43 different wires that you had to figure out the lengths, the colors, and figure out these different connectors. So it was just miserable. And the problem is when I do it, nothing works because if the points aren't touching and they're not set up properly, the signal doesn't work.
So you need to be an electrical engineer.
Exactly, which is why this works because my co-founder is.
So you're cut out the time. Let's put it all in here and make it so Dan a few years ago could have done.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
So, but at AgTechX, I had a place to work and community of people that were excited, and I think between you and Ricky, some of the people that you brought in and introduced me to personally because they had come through with interest are still in the team now. So, AgTechX has been just a great supporter of us and allowing us to have these devices here, even though for the most part they never really worked the way that we wanted to. But going through that process and seeing ultimately what we wanted and how these systems would work and ways that we can connect sensors all made its way into this. So now I'm hopeful that we can actually do our mission because one of the things at AgTechX, the goal was always to set up these systems that, all right, if we had 8 of these boxes or 4 or 2, can we do ABC experiments where maybe we test exactly the same variables with one DWC and one NFT type system, or we test with different types of lights, and we see kind of what works because this science is not written. There's no answers right now, and that anybody with these systems can really contribute to the global knowledge pool. And so, AgTechX is just a place where we can learn, but also, seeing how the community has grown from this concept of indoor farming is the answer to indoor farming is an answer. It's not the answer. It works really well with sustainability and local food and green roofs and permaculture and energy and solar, and it's together that all of these things work really nicely. And so AgTechX has just been where we've been able to work, where the team has been able to kind of get together and congeal, and it's been just a great resource. And I love the new space because that basement back there is
Yeah, great things start small, right? Like a seed. But a couple of things I wanted to say there. First is this dialogue, right? So vertical farming. When I was first getting into the blog, vertical farming will save the world and will feed humanity. and it was like really dramatic headlines. And we made a commitment, to really try and foster a deeper conversation. Obviously, that's difficult when there's all this hype and little information. So it kind of took time year after year. And what's been exciting is to see that as other blogs and other companies are more responsible with their marketing and the way they communicate this or even challenge it, the discussion gets more interesting.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's not like people are saying, oh, vertical farming doesn't work anymore, let's give up. In fact, people are more motivated to find ways to see how this will fit in the greater food system and understand its content. That's one thing that I think is really, gives me optimism that we're getting to a more sophisticated, complex, deeper, honest conversation about what vertical farming can do. And then other ideas come from it that really are like for specific problems today. It doesn't have to all be big vertical farms in the future. There's really so many ways you can use this idea of indoor growing and apply it to specific niches and industries. And then with Agritecture, I really appreciate the things you said, because for us, we really thought about, Ricky, co-founder, and I really thought about, what's the gap we really want to fill? And we felt like, okay, if you're in a makerspace and you have one of these, sure, that's cool. You'll probably meet interesting people and you can find collaborations. You don't really have other people who are growing plants or have tried other crops to talk with. So those discussions have to happen somewhere separate from the space you're doing the testing. Or if you're in a co-working space that's a traditional one, like a WeWork, you can't really set up this on your desk.
Absolutely not.
People will be pretty freaked out, and you need that, especially if you're doing some data play. And so to have kind of a sandbox, it's like a safe space, where it's like everybody has a similar, at least a niche question, and we're bringing in kind of traditional co-working models with renting a desk for the day or the month, or if you're visiting from out of town, but then also with like the hardware into it. Part of it, I think, has really fostered what we want, which is a mix of solutions and really kind of collaboration. But I think that safe space, or that place where you can make mistakes when it comes to agriculture, and you're not interrupting anybody in that way, is what we're really trying to build here.
Well, I think what's really exciting is that for me, really having the idea of the smart farming idea, right? Not really having too much of a clue until recently, but at AgTechX last year, we had the chance to work with Jason and Cersei. So both of which are entrepreneurs that are using indoor farming concepts to build non-food businesses. And I think that's really exciting, because it just changes the narrative and the dialogue about what's going on. I think too often, just because of the capital that's invested, people are forced to turn leafy greens, because that's the only way that they can see how to pay back, because the payback period for other crops might be too long, or it's too hard, or whatever it is. But to work with those entrepreneurs that were in the space, Cersei was growing flowers for a fragrance company, and Jason was growing microgreens and herbs for a cocktail business. And so those are like two super niche entrepreneurs that started with nothing. So Cersei, we had a system just like this, and while we weren't as successful as we would have wanted to, she got such, I hope she would say this, but it seems like she got a really great understanding of what it takes to actually grow plants, so that when she does set up this next production level facility, she's already got a place to start with a light recipe.
Yeah, I think that knowledge sharing, I certainly witnessed it between all of you, and I think that's, whether the idea that they end up with or you end up with is the same that was happening there is beside the point. Because as I described, there's like these stages before you get to the level that you end up with what you're doing. I had 3 other blogs before I did agriculture, right? So, it's like you experiment, and that's part of being an entrepreneur. So let's do a little bit of a demo, like try to explain to us, try and show us what we can do here. Obviously, we don't have plants in here, but this system is getting set up. So yeah, where should we?
Absolutely. So just a quick intro.
Can you show the components?
Yeah. So this is the grow strip. This is a demo version, so it doesn't have all of the features that we're talking about. But the idea is this is what's going to come out of the box. It's going to have different colors and a different logo. But if you look at any grow around here, I think you guys have done a fantastic job about bringing systems and new looks to it. You look at the electrical system, it is a mess. We can show you some of them, but every single one looks almost the same, where it's a surge protector with these block timers plugged into it. And basically where this would go in is right into that. So you could theoretically unplug everything and plug it into this. And what we'll do is we could have your lights plugged into outlet 1. We could have your fans into outlet 2, heater, cooler, whatever it is. You could program your own. You could do 5 lights. You could do 4 different pumps. And all of these controls to set a program are going to be done on your phone, tablet, or computer. So the idea is that how do we take all of the atoms in this physical space and digitize it to bits? And that's where we're going to go. So, I'll bring up, I don't know what the best way to do this is, but I do have
the iPad?
Yeah, I have my iPad here.
Bring it here. We can always pull up close. Scott's behind the scenes filming, so he'll tell us what looks good.
Scott is always behind the scenes running the show. So here we have our Grow dashboard. So coming in close.
Is that good, Scott?
So what we have is we have our basic Grow dashboard. And the idea is that in this system, so this dashboard is actually corresponding to this live system here that we're just getting up and running. But the idea is that we have fans, lights, and an air pump in this closed environment that we want to start to be able to program. Right now, out of the box, you might not know what works. We'll talk about that in a second. But what we've done is we set basic programs to turn these power on and off. So, for example, the lights are set to turn on, I believe that they're turned on at 7 a.m. for 16 hours, whereas the pumps are turned on for 5 minutes and off for 45 minutes. We don't quite have the automation built out yet, but eventually we're going to be able to turn the fans or cooler on to manage the temperature.
Anything plugged in, you can have it in like a single dashboard to control the timing for them.
Exactly.
And the scheduling, which is, because I've tried a lot of smart plugs on our systems here, and it's been pretty frustrating because I have one app for the EcoBee or whatever. I have another app which connects to I log in, I connect to Osram, high-end LED lamp. Is that it? So anything that's plugged in with power, you can also take the data coming from it and put it into a single dashboard?
Exactly. So we have, you jumped ahead a little bit. So before we talk about how the power...
Always looking at the future.
Well, that's a whole nother thing that we're super excited about. But before we even get to the power, we're going to have sensors, right? So we have sensors and we have cameras that are monitoring the environment. So next week on September 26th, when we launch on Indiegogo...
Mark your calendars, folks.
It's coming. We're going to be launching with a camera and a basic air sensor. So in the box with the unit, you're going to get the ability to put in the camera, and the images are just going to go right to the dashboard. So you can track your images over time, and you can actually see the plants grow and create a GIF off of that. Awesome. And then also you can superimpose what the temperature was, what the humidity was over time.
Relationships.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just because that's the first sensor that we have. We're working on an enhanced air sensor, which is going to add in CO2 tracking, lux, and then also light spectrum. We're going to work on pH sensors. We've talked about biological sensors. We've talked about EC and water and soil. Basically, any type of metric that the public wants us to build. What we invented is we invented a new way to integrate any of these sensors into our system just by plugging it in. So everything is plug and play. You'll never see a naked wire end with us. Right now, it's still wired. In the future, it will be wireless. But right now, we're still working on the wired idea. And the idea, what we want to do is to be able to allow anyone to get a sensor, plug it into the device, and that data is automatically routed to their Grow dashboard. And so we think that there's thousands and millions of data points that people are going to be able to collect and manage to, because now you're collecting the data, the software is able to program it. You don't have to touch any hardware ever again, and create your new cycle. And then as you jumped ahead, this is really cool. This is the other side that we invented on a hardware component, is each of these outlets is going to have energy tracking. So you're going to be able to see a per watt and per kilowatt usage for any of these outlets. So what's going to be really cool for us is now we can start to say, grow the most amount of food with the lowest energy consumption. Or we can sequence out your grow because we know when you're using your peak energy to the time when the energy is the cheapest or the time when it's the most abundant.
I think that's awesome. And one of my favorite articles in vertical farming that we didn't write was written by, I think it was Dean Falcone at Freshbox Farm. He talks about the key metrics to see if your farm is successful. One of them is grams per kilowatt hour. This thing could really tell me that on an A/B test. Like if I did two different things, using different equipment, that I can then use that decision to say, my scaled up farm or my next stage, what am I going to do? What am I going to choose? Or sometimes you want to actually test the equipment that companies are selling you or asking you to ask. It's like any industry, there are tech companies that are, it might not work as labeled, or you might try something from China that may be riskier.
Or your light could be a year old, and we're noticing through the electrical signal
what's changing.
That it's consuming 60% less power than it did last year at this time. Right? So then you could look at the validity of a lot of these tests, and with some advanced light sensors, now we could actually start to figure out, does an HPS, how does it compare to an LED light for 300 watts?
Yeah, you kind of see the data in articles, but you can have your own data, right, in your own studies to think about. And so, tell us a bit more about your team, because there seems like a lot of hardware and software requirements to execute this.
Oh, yeah.
Also, you guys some industrial design. Briefly, what's your team about?
So this idea started when I connected actually at AgTech Week 2017. So it keeps coming full circle, and that's another reason why next week is so special for me and the team, because it's like that yearly anniversary. We keep coming out with something new. But last year I presented on the state of the at-home hydroponics market. I was fascinated by the appliances.
And we had a bunch of demos.
Yeah, we had demos. We had a great panel. We had a full house, and I think it was such a cool study, because how do people, like individual consumers, connect with this world is really through that lens. And long story short, it was a little disappointing in the state of the market. I think it's just prohibitively expensive to make anything, right? As soon as you build the box, you add in hundreds and hundreds of dollars of costs on a per unit basis, but also the research to build out the plastic molds and the industrial design to get this. So I connected with Ian, my co-founder, because he was working on a prototype that looked kind of like this. It was green and yellow, and it was shorter and whatever. But he was knocking around with this prototype, and he sent it so we could display it for that event. And the legend is that I took it apart, and I'm like, holy crap. One, the quality of the engineering is compared to someone who had done that on my own with no talent and background in it, versus what he was doing. You could see it right away that there was superior quality in this, but also realizing that you no longer had to cut anything, plug anything in, no tools required, just plug it right into the outlets. That's it. So we started working together, and he's a product designer, but he's also had a lot of experience in medical devices, and he's actually built components for artificial parts, right? So he was involved in that project, and he was building the valves, so his technical capacity is unmatched. And so we just started talking together, and for about 6 months we had conversations about what we wanted to do and what I wanted to see from a product. And he's like, we can't do it, we can't do it, we can't do it. It's like, oh, I figured it out. And from there we started. So Ian is the lead hardware engineer, he's the CTO and co-founder. He's out in Sacramento. So right now all of our designs you'll see it somewhere designed in Sacramento and Brooklyn. Obviously we have that bi-coastal big tech city thing, but not quite New York and San Francisco. And then the rest of the team, amazingly, pretty much came through AgTech X. So the first couple people that we brought on are David and Dylan, two of our lead software engineers. Dylan's on the embedded system. So there's a whole operating system that we had to build that lives internally on the device. And then David is building the cloud, so the back end that's able to handle the device to that. White, who's our director of marketing and special projects guy, he is everywhere and he's wonderful. But he's been really helping us correct our message, like what are we doing and how do we want to communicate it? And then almost most interestingly is Andrew. So Andrew was someone that you introduced me to.
Yeah, we interviewed him. We did a live webinar with him. Yeah.
You sent me over his master's thesis. And
so good.
It was fantastic. And he's actually out in Minnesota right now, and he's just been doing all of our graphic and industrial design. So anything that looks pretty is all him. And he's just, the amount of work that we put into this next logo rebrand and how he was able to do it was, we probably went through 400 different logo marks and colors, and we're going to tell that story at some point also. And then lastly is Monty. And Monty was kind of one of the final pieces that really brought everything together, because he wasn't through AgTech X, but he was one of the first people to email us at info@growcomputer.io, because he followed you on Twitter and you had tweeted something about it, and he's like, this is what I want. And so Monty is an experienced UI UX designer and software project manager, but also avid indoor grower. He's got, I think, 3 tower gardens in his apartment. He's got over 100 different plant sites, and he's growing everything you can imagine. And he's so technologically advanced that he wanted these smart controls but he was frustrated that there was nothing on the market. And so he joined, and he's been fantastic in helping us kind of recraft where we are and where we're going, because this is really just the beginning. When I say that, I really do mean it. Like, we're already talking about what we want to add in here and the things that we're going to bracket in and capabilities that we're going to add, and it's next level stuff. And so everybody together has made this real. I think, I just wrote a blog article for answering some questions about what it means being the entrepreneur, and I think kind of only when you're in a team like this do you realize CEO is just a job. It's just one of the jobs that is required to bring this out. It's not my company. It is not. I am not the boss. I am not the crazy entrepreneur. But it's the role that you need to fill to help bridge the gap between all the amazing work that's going on internally and everything else that's going on externally. And so it's great to represent everybody at a conversation like this, because we have really put in a lot of work. And the guys are still cranking on improving everything, improving the software, improving the web page, improving the videos. We have some unbelievable videos because, once again, through the community that between Agritecture and AgTechX, we interviewed, I think, a dozen different people, both here and a couple other locations. And the stories that people are telling are part of this video that we're trying to communicate. And that's so much work also. So everybody is really cranking to make sure we get this out. And it's just the best team I've ever worked with, and everybody is incredibly smart. But even more importantly than being smart is they know where we're going.
Right.
Everyone kind of believes in this future of farming and urban agriculture movement from their own perspective. But together, we realize that this is an opportunity to bring all this technology that we would want to see to the world. And it's been a really fun ride, and I'm just excited to take the next step and get this out there. I mean, we've been cranking on it for a year, talking to everybody. Anybody that's watching this has probably heard me pitch this at some point. And it's just exciting to get to that point where we're really going to be launching.
Well, Dan, I really want to thank you for your time, but most of all, your thoughtfulness and your sincerity. You have so much energy, and it's really always a pleasure speaking with you. So Grow Strip by GrowComputer is going to be on Kickstarter, right? Indiegogo, because it's better. Indiegogo next Wednesday. So you can get your hands on the first. I think there's going to be 100 in the release.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we are committing to making 100 and delivering them in 2018.
Wow, so it's not one of those...
It's not one of those campaigns.
I won't mention the names, but I've definitely ordered things, multiple things that I still haven't gotten. So this we can get.
This year we're going to get. I think that's part of the value that we built, is we figured out, and by we I mean Ian. Ian has figured out really great ways to manufacture these. So we have our own high-tech components that we invented that are custom, but almost everything else we're able to make pretty easily. So we are delivering the first 100 units in 2018.
That's a commitment right there.
That's a commitment. We're doing it. It's happening. I hope everyone still agrees with me that it's possible, but we're doing it. And then, after that, we're going to sequence them out as they come in early 2019. But this is the beginning, right? So if you do get this, we are going to be launching new sensors, new components, new peripherals. One exciting thing that we've been asked for now twice, which is really kind of neat, is logarithmic and programmatic sequencing of lights. So with LEDs, they have dimmers built in. So how do you turn them on programmatically to create whether some sort of algorithm or to better match the sun?
Right.
All that's going to be possible through this device. And everything is going to be incremental and modular. And I'm just excited to see what people are going to do with it. I think there's going to be some fun stuff.
It's going to be really exciting. So if you want to be one of the first 100 to get your hands on a Grow Strip, be sure to head over to growcomputer.io and follow GrowComputer on social media to get the announcement for the release on Indiegogo and be able to take part in it. It's going to be launched at the Agritecture Exchange next week. You're going to be at a bunch of those events, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be around next week in New York and Brooklyn. Actually, what's really cool is in parallel, we are going to be powering an exhibit at the United Nations General Assembly.
Wow, there you go.
So there is one of our clients is really working on using hydroponics to show these global leaders about the power of indoor and urban agriculture.
I love that.
And we're kind of sneaking a unit in there because otherwise it's just a couple buckets with some plants.
Right, and some plugs all over.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we're saying is that, okay, we're going to want to come in and build and just power the whole system through this. And have a tablet up there and show what's going on.
Yeah, that's exciting to grow the audience and have other people look at it too. If you're a hardware or software startup or you're looking to develop your own urban farm, consider AgTechX. You can join as a member for a day or for a month, and you get the benefits of mentorship with me, but also connections to other like-minded people, and even some physical space to do experiments. So you can learn more about that at www.agtech-x.com. And thanks for following Agritecture. We always appreciate it. If you could give us your feedback, or if you have somebody you want us to interview on a live broadcast, please let us know. And let's have a small round of applause for Dan.
Well, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure, and it's really exciting to be back out here. And then just two things. If you are excited about what we're doing and you want to follow us, at GrowComputer everywhere. Just kind of need to get growcomputer.com. We are also
.com now. Yeah,
we got the .com, which is great. And then I can be reached at dan@growcomputer.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything like that. And then also, if you stuck around for this webinar, we're going to offer a special perk if you do sign up next week and you put in Agritecture webinar. Right? So Agritecture and then webinar. We're going to have a promo code special for you guys. We're going to figure out something cool to get for everybody. And, it's just a little thank you for everybody that's here. And I appreciate it so much. This is such a cool thing. And I know a lot to plan for next week on both sides. So thank you for having me and taking the time.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you.